Hello, welcome to the seventh edition of Beyond the Box Score. I'm Trayvon Hastings. With me, as always, is my co-host Joey Korzanowski. Joey, how was the Browns this weekend? How was Ohio State football? Don't have the guard, but it's fine.
Yeah, Ohio State was on a bye, so that was it didn't really give me anything to take my mind off the Browns. The Browns are on a bye this upcoming week, but yet another tough week for the Browns, especially this week against the Patriots. It looked like they were in it. I mean, they were up 7-3 to start the game. They kept holding New England to field goals, but then somehow the Browns score on the first drive, and then the offense looks completely inept every single drive after that. I have absolutely no idea how. And you got Miles Garrett having historic games, and he's slamming his helmet because we're still losing. So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully some easier matchups here after the bye week. Definitely some more winnable games, but they look winnable on paper. But with the Browns, you just never know.
Yeah, they're actually averaging less points than the expansion Browns of I think it was 1996 or 97. So that was 13.7 points. This year's Browns are averaging 13.6. And I might have flipped that, but it's equally bad. It doesn't really matter. Um, I've never witnessed a player that have 5 sacks in a game and that team lose. And Miles Garrett also now has the most sacks per game in NFL history, statistically speaking, at zero point 0.9 a game. And he's the only player in that top 10 list to have a career losing record. So I would understand the frustration. But at the same time, we kind of talked about this earlier this week. If the winning was going to bother him that much, he shouldn't have signed back for all of that money. After he was previously saying that the biggest thing for him is winning a championship, why go back to a team and a franchise, frankly, that we know is inept to winning, and they're not going to win one anytime soon? I guess I was a little confused on the Miles Garrett aspect and why he decided to come back.
No, I think you're definitely right. But a lot of people, like you just said, are saying that like he's for some reason he's like not allowed to be upset, because they're not winning. Yes, like he did sign up for this. He knew what was coming, but I do think it is different, in the offseason, kind of understanding that the team might not win very games, but then, when you're having historic games like this and you're losing, I think it's a lot different going through it. And to be completely honest, I like that he's frustrated. I like that he's kind of showing this emotion because if he was sitting on the bench, cracking jokes, grinning, smiling, I think I'd have more of a problem with that because then that would show that he really did just take it for the money. So I mean, at least he's showing he cares. Um, I mean, it does suck as a fan, and honestly, in past couple of weeks, he has been a lot more vocal in press conferences. Saying he's frustrated, and just saying that he's not happy with not necessarily the direction the team's going, but with the results that are being produced. And I like that. I think that sends a message to the GM, the owner, to show that, hey, things got to change now. We need to do something to change this around. So I like that he's been vocal. I like that he's showing emotion. And he's showing that he cares. And yes, money was probably the driving factor why he came back. But I think more importantly, I think he wants to win here. So I think because he's been here his whole career and he's been through all the ups and downs. He's got a very small taste of success, obviously with 3 playoff games, 2 trips to the playoffs. So I think he's dedicated to winning here, and I think that's why he's shown so much emotion.
Yeah, and I would also add that I'm in the camp for the Browns at least on uh, getting rid of ownership, so selling the team. If speaking on the Haslam's side of things, um, I just think it hasn't been as good of a fit. Hasn't been as good of a fit for the Haslams as maybe it was when years ago, or even in the Baker Mayfield era. So with the new stadium and everything else, like clearly, I feel like the Haslams are in the camp of the business side of things from ownership.
Hmm.
Maximizing their profit when they inevitably sell the team at some point. I do think they're in that process, but I think they should just rip the band-aid off and just do it. Kind of like the Tigers. They should rip the band-aid off and probably trade Scooble because they won't pay him. But it's a similar concept. Like, I think for the Browns, if the fans want to see any sort of change or winning, you're going to have to get new ownership. That's just my thoughts.
No, I had said that when Miles Garrett requested the trade back in February, March. Now I kind of said that more out of frustration, because just it seemed like everything's falling apart after the year they had last year, and how the best player that you've really had since Jim Brown is requesting a trade because you can't win. It makes sense. But the thing with the Haslam's is that they just take big swings, but they miss. Like I guess you could consider Baker a big swing because he was not necessarily a bona fide, the consensus number one overall pick, but they took him. Then they gave up on him, because he went to go get Deshaun Watson, and that was probably the biggest swing that they'll ever take, and it couldn't have flopped even. It couldn't have flopped any harder. Trading for Odell Beckham completely flopped. You gave up a good amount for him, just clearly didn't work. You hired Freddie Kitchens in 2019. That was a pretty big gamble. It just didn't work. So I like that the Haslams, they kind of like it in the way that Miles, they care. They have not made the right moves. But I would ask you this: so, given the Haslam's history in making big moves, yes, they didn't trade Miles when they probably should have in the offseason. Would you trade Miles Garrett now?
I'm still in the camp of moving Miles Garrett at some point. And I even said after the game, I said, all right, his value is going to be at its highest literally right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just trade him. Um, if the Browns want to actually properly rebuild and accelerate that process, rather than being stuck in the middle, which I frankly think they are, then they should do away with the Miles Garrett era. And also drafting Mason Graham and having another interior edge rusher who, I shouldn't say interior edge rusher, but edge rusher, interior D lineman type who now can kind of take the fold on that side of the ball. Like the Browns have statistically prior to this game, they were the number one total defense in the NFL. So like they have pieces. Now Miles Garrett is a huge part of that, but I think the Browns defense would be all right without him. I'm not gonna say he's replaceable because he's not, but they would be better off getting a haul that would allow them to address literally all the other holes on their team because I just think they have more than what some other people might think. I just think the whole thing needs like cleansed and redone. I know there's rumors of Denzel Ward trade getting traded. They already traded Emerson, I think, in that slot or it was Newsom, I think, in that
Newsom,
slot.
yeah.
But then they have Emerson, who has struggled to stay healthy at times. So like they have pieces, but the pieces don't mesh. So when that happens, you have to look in the mirror and maybe reassess your team. And I think that's what they need to do, frankly. So
Yeah, I think the problem is now that I think that there would be a way to trade Miles Garrett. I don't think. I mean, they're already in salary cap hell with the Deshaun Watson trade. I think this would just be putting them even farther in that hole. You're pretty sure like well over half of your cap would be given up to two players and just dead hits, and neither of them would be playing for you. So I mean, you're basically fielding. You'd be struggling to field 53 guys. So I think that's the problem. But I think in the offseason, I understood why they didn't trade Miles Garrett, and honestly, I wasn't mad about it either. But I think the Browns front office looked at it as they knew this offense would struggle, so they were trying to combat that with good defense. And you mentioned Emerson, and he struggled to get healthy. He got hurt on the first day of camp this year, tore his Achilles. So he was done from the year, and he was supposed to have a big bounce back year this year. I was excited to see what he could do. So that was the absolute blow from the jump. Um, but yeah, I think that the Haslams thought that if we sell out on defense, go all out on defense, and have to shut down defense, that can try and combat some of our offense. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, the offense is just that bad. They didn't do enough to try and build up the offense this offseason. I mean, if you think about like what do they do on offense? They draft two running backs and a rookie tight end, and then they picked up Isaiah Bond after the draft, and then you took two late round quarterbacks. I mean, none of that was ever going to get the job done, and it doesn't help that I think they overrated the problems on the offensive line. You very likely could have five new offensive linemen next year. You came in banking on two tackles who, quite frankly, are just simply injury prone, and they got hurt 4 weeks into the year. So I think the Haslams just I understood why they did it. Obviously hindsight is 2020, but yeah, it's just a really tough spot to be in at this point.
yeah, and that will serve as our precursor into the episode. But I'm in full agreement on the Browns. I had said for the draft that I overall liked some of the talent and like some of the value in which they got those players.
Hmm.
I agree with when they were selected. I felt like it was very all over the place, and they kind of misjudged value in some cases, but executed it tremendously in others, like when they got Graham when they did. And also, I wasn't a huge fan of taking two backs. I definitely think Judkins has paid off and he's been everything as advertised, but Samson hasn't really hit the ground running at all, and he's kind of stuck in a logjam with Jerome Ford, who I know Browns fans at this point, for the most part, despise. So I just think if Judkins is going to be the bell cow back getting 20 carries anyway, why go get Samson? It doesn't really like make sense to me. So their draft was probably in the middle, like C plus ish, because I think they did get a ton of talent, but I think they could have executed a few of the picks better. But that's a little bit of Browns talk before we get into the episode. So it was another fascinating week. We had another firing in the sport of football. Brian Kelly let go from LSU. This was inevitable, and I honestly wasn't expecting it right now. I thought at some point it might happen, but Brian Kelly let go pretty much right after the decimation of LSU against Texas A&M, who beat LSU at LSU and had the stadium empty in the third quarter, which is a never before seen thing there. So I definitely think that was the call to action to get rid of Brian Kelly. We're also going to talk about the uh, freak Victor Wembanyama. I was trying to think of like a cool nickname, but I don't. He the freak of nature, Victor Wembanyama. Um, Also going to talk about who I think should be the MVP as of right now, Jonathan Taylor, having a phenomenal season, and then we're going to, I guess, recap and preview into the final stretch of the World Series. It has been a phenomenal series. It's kind of gone the way we thought it would, and I said it was going to go at least 6 games, and here we
Yeah.
are. So we're going to start though with the Brian Kelly situation because we have now had a firing on our podcast that we have talked about for this is the third straight week, and now 2 weeks in a row in the SEC. So I would say I want to get your thoughts, but I know you're not in the camp for firing in season, but I do think this one is definitely justified. I don't know if the Billy Napier one was. I didn't think the James Franklin one was because I thought he earned the right to kind of play that year out. He reestablished what Penn State is and what they are and what they should be, which is a consistent, somewhat nationally contending title team. After all the sanctions and everything else that they had gone through, he has definitely revived their program. It has not happened at Florida, but you never know. And for LSU, they definitely are not exceeding expectations. They're not even meeting expectations for what that job has and everything that it comes with it. This should be a team that has won an SEC title and also potentially been in or won a national championship by now.
Yeah, I just pulled up Brian Kelly's record. I mean, I knew he had a good overall record. I didn't even realize he was 19-10 in the SEC. That is absolutely not going to cut it. And look, this one I think was probably the most justified out of the three that we've talked about. I think he had the most expensive buyout too. I saw like 54 million. I mean, that is ridiculous. But look, I've never really been a big Brian Kelly fan. I mean, I don't think he's a phenomenal coach. I mean, obviously he's done some good things, and yeah, you have to give him the respect that he deserves. He's got this far in his career, for a reason. But he doesn't seem like a program riser. I think it was just a weird fit from the start. He doesn't really scream an SEC guy. And honestly, I think this one was coming for a long time. Really, when they lost to USC to begin the year last year. And remember, he was pounding on the table, and he was at, just it seemed like fake rage. And I was just like, I can't see this guy being employed for much longer. And now, a year and a half later, here we are. But they're 2-3 in conference this year, and you do have to give a lot of credit to Texas A&M. Texas A&M is clearly one of the top four teams in the country. They are really good, and they will be making a national title run. Marcel Reed is ridiculous. But I mean, this LSU team has just looked completely lackluster on offense. I know Nussmeier's been banged up, and I mean their defense has been solid this year. But I think this automatically becomes the most enticing job in the country.
Yes, definitely the most enticing. I think we all, no matter what era of either like age or fandom you are, you have some sort of memory of a dominant or contending LSU team. And we haven't really had it since, like, I guess this. COVID through era. The post Joe Burrow
Hmm.
and Chase and Jefferson, like we have not seen it. The previous three coaches before Brian Kelly, Nick Saban, Les Miles, and Ed Orgeron all won at least 40 games. And they all also won an SEC title and won a national championship. And I believe all three of those coaches also did all of those things at least by their fourth year. And if it wasn't all of it, it'd be SEC championship by year four. And Brian Kelly has not done that. Obviously, when you stack his record up against Saban and Miles and Orgeron, they all are between like 43-9 or 40-9, and Les Miles is like 42-11. But Brian Kelly's 34-14. He's definitely lost more games than he should be at that job, and I agree. I've never been a Brian Kelly guy, never, not once. I think he's more on the overrated side of the coaching world. Obviously, he's gotten to the places he had because he's not necessarily overrated. But I think in terms of top tier elite coaches, he's definitely a tier or two below. And he was able to, get Notre Dame to what Notre Dame should be. I think Marcus Freeman's elevated that, obviously. But
Hmm.
Brian Kelly never seemed like a SEC guy. Really, from the beginning when he got hired and he showed up to the basketball game and was going fake Louisiana, and I was like, this isn't going to
the,
work.
the the fake Southern accent.
Yes, he clearly was. I know what he was trying to do, but it was a horrible look.
Hmm.
It looked like he was just kind of there for like the showbiz aspect of it, like the entertainment. It was something like off of his checklist, and there was that final boss thing he wanted to do, which was go coach in the SEC or the Big Ten or something like that after Notre Dame, almost like a stepping stone position for him, and that was the very top. So I don't really think, honestly, like Brian Kelly gives me the vibes of somebody who, like, yeah, I didn't do what I was supposed to, but hey, I got $54 million sitting here. And shout out Scott Woodward because that is the AD who hired Jimbo Fisher at Florida State and hired Brian Kelly at LSU, and that is a total of $130 million in buyouts. So we don't ever mention that much on the collegiate side of things, which is the people hiring like the coaches and stuff. We always ask that, or we bring that up in the NFL or the NBA, but we don't ever do that in college sports. So I think those administrators, or the board, or whoever it is, directing that traffic, they need to be held to a little bit of a higher standard and be held more accountable because nobody should be in a position where they're getting fired and they're getting that much money. Even the James Franklin one isn't as much as Brian Kelly's. And it's all because they signed these really long contracts. Brian Kelly was in, I think, year four of a 10-year contract. So Jimbo Fisher, similar thing. James Franklin, similar thing. And I think James Franklin had just gotten extended too. So that adds another layer to it. But I agree on everything. I do think this is the top job, and if you're not Ryan Day at Ohio State, Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, Kirby Smart at Georgia, and maybe I would lean definitely LSU on this, but like maybe if you're Dabo or Dan Lanning, you um, are untouchable. Like you're not going to leave where you're at right now. I think if LSU gives a call to literally any other coach in the country, they're going to be enticed. They're going to consider taking that job. I think Dan Lanning would potentially consider it, go back into the SEC and rebuild LSU. I do think that is a possibility. I don't think it'll happen because of how dominant he's built Oregon up to be uh, consistently. As for Dabo, it really comes down to if Clemson wants to do away with Dabo's Sweeney era, and then I think he definitely could, you know, be an option. But there's really only like 4 to 6 jobs in the entire country that you don't leave to take this LSU job.
Yeah, I think the most interesting one is Lane Kiffin, right? I mean, he already coaches in the SEC. He has a really good team already. He has, I don't know if he has the most resources, but he has enough resources to clearly get his team over the top. I mean, look what he's doing with a backup quarterback right now. You know, your star quarterback in Jackson Dart leaves, and your team doesn't skip a beat. Your supposed starter Austin Simmons gets banged up, and you've got a D2 transfer playing out. I shouldn't say playing out of his mind, but playing really good football. So I'd be really interested to see if he likes his job because, let's be honest, LSU is in a really good position. I mean, they are consistently atop the recruiting rankings. You have all of Louisiana to yourself. You're the only college there. Every kid in Louisiana wants to be a Tiger, so you've got that going for you. You probably have more resources than Ole Miss. Uh, and honestly, I think he'd be a good fit for Ole Miss. He's familiar with the SEC. He's familiar with that region. But yeah, you know you mentioned all those coaches that are, untouchable. Everybody's untouchable until a better job comes calling. And all these schools feel like that they can always do better than what they have, honestly. So I think that's why you're seeing some of these firings happen in season and happen so quickly because, schools are, we talk about players being impatient with the transfer portal, being quick to transfer. Some of these coaches are quick with firing coaches. I know Penn State had a pretty long leash with James Franklin. But I wouldn't say Brian Kelly got that quick of a leash. I mean, he was only there a couple of years. Yeah, he had disappointed in pretty much every year. But, could he have been fired earlier? I suppose. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see who takes this job. My leading candidate would probably be Lane Kiffin, just because I know LSU would throw probably a ridiculous amount at him. Um, and if you're Lane Kiffin, I mean, let's be honest. If you we talked about this with the Florida job, right? If Lane Kiffin were to go to one of those schools, all of his players would just end up transferring with him. So it's really not like he'd be leaving his whole team. I mean, he would be taking who he wanted.
Yeah, and I think obviously the other obvious name that is going to fly around is Marcus Freeman. And I don't think he honestly is going to leave Notre Dame. I think he wants to
Hmm.
stay there and continue to establish them and what
Yeah,
they have. But the other job was Texas. That's what I was thinking of. Like Stark wouldn't leave Texas to go to LSU. Texas
yeah,
is same level of brand and prestige and expectation. I don't think Sark would leave Texas, but I think the top of the line coaches they could try to get are the Marcus Freemans and the Lane Kiffins, and I'll throw out Dan Lanning. I don't think he's going to leave, but I'll throw him out. And then also, a guy like Josh Heupel at Tennessee. He has built them to consistently be an 8 to 10 win team. I know 8 is low, and that's not what LSU is looking for, but he has had years where he can get Tennessee to 10 or 11 wins, and they're in the playoff and they're contending. And Tennessee's been pretty good on the recruiting aspect as well. I think all of these teams, no matter that contract extension Kurt Signetti just got, they're going to call, they're going to ask, they're going to see. I don't think he plans on leaving Indiana anytime soon, though, and he plans to retire as a Hoosier. He's already made this clear. So I think he's off the board, which is a huge hit to probably all of these hires or hirings that need to happen. But I would agree. I think it probably stacks up LSU, Florida by a slim margin over Penn State, mostly just because of the brand, the money, the don't like everything that is available to you down south in Florida, in comparison to the number one clear and definitive Northeast team, roughly, which is Penn State, and they definitely control that entire area. I would argue, but I think there's a little bit more to offer at Florida. You're also in the SEC. The only question would be, do you want to choose uh, the likely, somewhat easier, like contending path for Penn State, which is getting by Ohio State or Michigan or Oregon, or in good years USC and Washington and Indiana, or the SEC path, which, as we know, has not stacked favorably for Florida in terms of scheduling the last few years. So I'll be fascinated to see what happens, but this one was definitely deserved. I think it was warranted, and yeah, Brian Kelly gets to sit somewhere and make $54 million now. I don't know if we'll see him again. Seeing like how he has looked, like physically, like from now to even like years ago before he took the LSU job. He looks like he's definitely aged some. Like the job's definitely taken a toll on him. So I think he could be someone that maybe we don't see return.
yeah, and I think part of it, I think a lot of schools would be kind of cautious given the lack of success that he's had in recent years. And I mean, it's kind of impossible to ignore all these reports that are coming out of ex players and ex coaches saying that he's not the best person. I mean, obviously, I've never met him. I would have no idea. But I'm just kind of speculating here. But if all these people are kind of coming out and saying the same thing, and just saying that he's not really a joy to work with, and he's not really the best person to be coached by, I think that's a huge, kind of a huge factor in people or in schools kind of going in a different direction. Honestly, I would also kind of be surprised if we saw him coach somewhere else. I mean, well, honestly, if I was him, you don't really need to coach anywhere else, right? I mean, you're getting $54 million. There's really no need for you to go to like a small school and prove it, unless you still have that burning desire to coach. Then by all means, go and do it, uh, because something like that could really kind of turn around his legacy. If he could go and build up a small school and have success somewhere else, maybe that would be what he needed to kind of rebuild his image. But at this point, I think a lot of schools kind of know what he is, and everything's kind of out on the table, and probably not looking the best for him.
Yeah, I'll let you close the segment out with that. But I want to transition into the story of Jonathan Taylor and the Indianapolis Colts. Taylor, in my opinion, should be the MVP frontrunner. If you go on betting sites, it's probably going to say Patrick Mahomes. I don't necessarily agree with that. I never agree with that. But it should be Jonathan Taylor at this point. I also think Jalen Hurts should get a ton of love. He has the most total touchdowns in the league from a quarterback perspective, and he's only turned the ball over one time. So those would be some of the dark horse candidates, I think. But Taylor should not be a dark horse. He should actually be the front runner, not just for MVP, but for Offensive Player of the Year, which we thought would definitely go to Puka Nakua. And I also thought here for a while, and I still will continue to think this Jackson Smith and Jigba, if he continues to get 100 yards every single game. But Jonathan Taylor, MVP, let me hear it.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get much of an argument out of me. I really do agree with you. I mean, he's probably going to have just as good of a season, if not better, than what Saquon had last year. I mean, he's probably easily going to have 2,000 yards. He's in first for rushing yards by a pretty considerable margin. He's got 12 touchdowns, and he's doing it consistently every week. And look, I know Daniel Jones has been better, but he is doing this with Daniel Jones at quarterback. I don't think anybody would put Daniel Jones in the top five, maybe not even top 10 quarterbacks yet. Although he is having a really good year, I have to give him some respect as well. But I definitely agree. I would love to see a running back win MVP. I'm kind of tired of it being just a QB award. I know quarterbacks are looked at as most valuable, but I mean MVP has really just turned into the best quarterback award, and Offensive Player of the Year has been best skill position award. It's really what it's been. But when you think of value, I mean Jonathan Taylor is he's not carrying this Colts offense, but he's a large reason as to why they're so good. Yeah, they've got a good defense, but they've got the number one offense in the league because of this dominant ground game. They can really just choke out any team they want because you cannot stop this ground game. So I would absolutely love to see another running back win an MVP award. I mean, when you thinking of MVP, I mean, I think Patrick Mahomes is the betting favorite, which I honestly don't hate. I think Mahomes is having a really good year. And he probably certainly deserves to be in the discussion. Jalen Hurts, I know not many people are going to like that, but he probably deserves to be in the discussion as well. He has really come on strong, and really ever since that Giants game, he has come on strong these last couple of weeks. But yeah, I think this would be a good chance for the NFL to show that this isn't just a quarterback award, and to at least give Jonathan Taylor some love, and definitely should at least be in the top two for sure.
Yeah, and Mahomes has had a pretty good year. I just don't think he should be the betting favorite. I should clarify
Yeah,
that. I think Taylor should be. I think Taylor's got the fourth or fifth best odds right now. So if you're a betting man or woman and you find what we call a high value pick or you're a sharp bettor, this would be the moment at a very good profit to take someone like Jonathan Taylor for MVP. But I don't see the Colts really slowing down because they're in the AFC South and the division's very easy. The Colts could very reasonably win probably 13 games, have the number one seed, and the playoffs run through Indianapolis, which I don't think we envisioned it being with that way with Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson at quarterback. And I saw a report they're going to probably work on a long term extension with Daniel Jones, which, hey, the offense is churning like this. They've had, I think, 6 games with 30 or more points per game. I 100% would give Daniel Jones a long term contract as well. And I would probably just trade Anthony Richardson because he clearly isn't a fit for Shane Steichen and how he wants to run his offense. So, on the Taylor point, the last running back MVP was Adrian Peterson in 2012. Remember being a very young football fan at that time, like mesmerized by Adrian Peterson. And Taylor is averaging more yards. He has more touchdowns through, I think it's 6 or 7 weeks or games. Um, he has significantly more touchdowns, which is sick, like 6 more, and he's averaging 7 yards per game more. So I think for sure that should be the pitch, or at least everything that the media and the fans and everybody wants. They push that narrative so it becomes a reality. Um, I do still think to this day Saquon should have been MVP last year. He wasn't even he didn't even finish like top 2 or 3 in voting, but should 100% have been the MVP. And I think part of the reason he didn't win it was because Derrick Henry literally had like 100 yards less than him, and Derrick Henry had like 1,900 yards. So
Hmm.
maybe seem as stood out or impressive as as if the second running back in the league had 1,500 yards. It was definitely a high uptick in rushing yards last year. Jahmyr Gibbs was just under 1,500 rushing yards last year in a committee with David Montgomery. So there was a lot of running back success last season, including Josh Jacobs and everybody else, and that's kind of continued into this year. So I would just simply argue, yes, Jonathan Taylor should win the MVP. Pretty cut and dry, quick conversation there because that's the reality. I also now want to transition into the freak of nature that I mentioned, Victor Wembanyama, because boy, he has been something. And in this game they just had against Toronto the other night, when he was on the court, they had an offensive rating, I think it was in the 130s, and defensive rating was 58 as a team. 58. So, if you guys don't know anything about defensive rating, like anything typically below like 100 to 105 is like pretty good, but 58 is beyond elite. We're talking like dead ball 2000 era, like 62 to 58 in the finals, like that type of thing. That's what that is. So he clearly has become a one man unit defensively. I saw him basically do a one man zone against Toronto. He showed on the screen. They kind of iced it for a second. He got back into the paint. And basically, Toronto, when he was in the game, they refused to even shoot in the paint. They took a ton of long floaters, and he was really able to either block most of those shots or have an effect on a lot of those shots inside the arc. So he's been an advantage for the Spurs, which I think we expected him to be when he got drafted anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like simply put, we've never seen anything like this. I mean, it's kind of funny. The NBA keeps trying to push the Jason Tatum nickname, the anomaly, and it just makes absolutely zero sense. If anything, I mean, this is the anomaly. Well, when have we ever seen somebody who's 7'4", 7'5", with the handle and the jump shot that Victor Wembanyama has? We haven't. I mean, it's absolutely insane. Um, and I told you this before we started recording. I think the only thing that's going to hold him back in his career would be health. I know he had the injury last year. I think that was more of a precautionary thing to hold him out. The Spurs weren't really going to win anything last year. That's not the case this year. They're winning games this year. They're going to be good. This looks like a playoff team this year. They're really young, but they've got players. I mean, like this is going to be a good team this year. So I'll be interested to see how they manage kind of Wemby throughout the year if that injury last year kind of comes back and lingers a little bit. I certainly hope not because the NBA is going to be good with him in it, and he's probably going to win every defensive player of the year for the next 10, 15 years if he's healthy, honestly. But
Yeah, that's my next question was
yeah,
like what the trajectory of his career could look like, and he could very easily solidify himself in a tier of player that, frankly, only belongs to Michael Jordan and LeBron James. Like, and if he were to get 10 to 15 Defensive Player of the Years, he's probably going to be recognized as better than both of them, just because
yeah.
I'm sure in that time he's going to win some MVPs. I think statistically, if he can remain where he's at or close to, and San Antonio is a top 6 team in the West, probably top 4 for this argument, I do think he would warrant being the MVP. I think we've had a ton of years recently where it probably should have been closer in terms of voting, in terms of Jokic and SJ, and also Giannis, who is literally the standard bearer of consistency in the NBA, averaging basically 30 to 12 or 14 rebounds and 6 or 7 assists for each of the last like 3 years. Giannis gets very slept on. I think he's underappreciated. And to be that skillful and also not skillful because he isn't a great jump shooter, but can still go out there and literally put up the same numbers every single week. Like, you literally can't stop Giannis.
Hmm.
Wemby is Giannis on drugs. Like, you literally can't stop the guy. He's got a really tight handle. He keeps going behind the back on people because when you're that tall, you think you can just run up and get the ball. He's got a phenomenally tight handle. He's stepping back, hitting threes, blocking shots as we expect him to. He's handling and he's playmaking. I mean, he really can probably beat a basketball team like 3-on-5, and you have Wembanyama on the three. Like, he really does serve as like one or two other players. So as long as the Spurs also stay healthy. Like reminder, they're doing this without De'Aaron Fox, um, and I think this kind of the way they've been playing, I think, serves as a reminder that they probably didn't even need De'Aaron Fox, especially with the way the lottery went and how it fell in their favor to get Dylan Harper. Like they literally could have played De'Aaron Fox for like 9 to 15 games last year, and they could probably turn around and trade him again like now, and that would be that. And I think they could pivot, have a ton of value, and a haul they get back from Fox, and almost take a page out of the Thunder's book, which is continuing to they keep that potential and that upside going for a very long period of time because of the amount of picks Oklahoma City has. It's because they're constantly moving pieces, and I think if the Spurs would do that with De'Aaron Fox, they could enter a very fascinating conversation. And frankly, if I was the Spurs, they won't do this. They don't want to break their team up, but they don't even have the team's not even at full health anyway, so we don't know how they're all going to play together. But I'm calling the Bucks when Giannis demands a trade, and I'm literally going to trade De'Aaron Fox and uh, so can and however many picks you want, and we'll go get Giannis because the Spurs with Giannis and Wemby will not lose a single championship for probably 5 years until Giannis's body gives out, and then. And that's the thing with the league, though, is that the healthiest team always wins at the end of the year. It's not always the best team. So if Giannis could stay healthy and Wemby could stay healthy, they're not losing. And then for the Bucks, they could get a dynamic guard to pair with Miles Turner and go from there because they have suspect guard play. I think inevitably we're going to get Giannis on the Spurs or the Knicks or the Heat. And if I was Giannis, I'm going to San Antonio. I know he probably wants to go to the Knicks, but I'm going to San Antonio.
To be honest, I mean, I think the Knicks would make sense, but if you're Giannis, why would you not want to play with San Antonio? I mean, how many people in the league are bigger than Giannis? I think Wemby might be one of the only ones, right? And I know Giannis has looked good this year, especially with the addition of Miles Turner. The rim protection last night against the Knicks was phenomenal. I mean, imagine with Giannis. Is anybody willing to drive into the paint on those two? I don't think so. I mean, can you imagine those two coming down the lane at you? No. And we talked about this before we started recording. I think they'd honestly be a good fit together because for 7'4", Victor Wembanyama actually spaces the floor really, really well. His handle on the outside, his ability to shoot the basketball, like that's not like you'd be clunked up in the paint down low. I mean, that's actually relatively good spacing for people for guys that big. So I think that would be absolutely insane. I think that I mean those two would be the betting favorites to win it all for years to come. Honestly, I think they'd match up well with just about any team that they went up against, but. For right now, though, Giannis in Milwaukee, I don't know. This whole thing is weird. It seems that everybody wants him. It seems like everybody wants him to leave because the team around him in Milwaukee isn't that good. Um, but I mean, anytime you watch the Bucks, I feel like all those guys step up around Giannis. I feel like he's kind of one of those guys that makes everybody better around him. You surround him with shooters, like they're going to get open looks. Hey, AJ Green last night hit a couple of threes in the second half. It's instantly brought the Bucks back against the Knicks. So yeah, I think that would honestly be a crazy fit. That's some stuff that's like only comes out of 2K, to be honest.
Yeah, and 2K would never trade Giannis to the Spurs. 2K won't even make Giannis tradable, but 2K's trade finder, like Madden's and MLB, the shows, like they're all frankly terrible, and you can pull off any trade. So that's a whole nother thing on the gaming side of it because Ronnie 2K needs to improve his game, and EA needs to improve Madden. But it would be a crazy fit. It would be a fit that probably works, and it'd be ironic because San Antonio was known for having the Twin Towers and Tim Duncan and David Robinson, and this would literally be the Twin Towers stacked on top of the Twin Towers because that's how dominant both of those players are. I mean, Wemby is. I don't care if he's listed at 7'4", 7'5". He is 7'7".
Mhm.
I refuse to believe otherwise from stuff I've seen regarding his height. Like Boban Marjanovic is 7'4", and he said he is literally standing like beneath Wemby. Like Wemby has to be 7'7". It's the whole Kevin Durant thing. Like DeMarcus Cousins and AD are both listed at basically 6'11", 7 foot, and they're as tall, if not shorter, than Kevin Durant. So is Joel Embiid, and Kevin Durant's listed at 6'10" typically. So it's all false. And then you factor in shoes on too. If they're a true 7 foot, you're really like 7'1", 7'2". So Wemby probably is literally 7'7" when he's playing. He could be closer to 8 foot in shoes. I guess it just depends. But um, the whole Bucks thing, I kind of agree because like while I would like to see Giannis in maybe a bigger market or on a different team playing a different style of basketball, really to like help the longevity of his career as well, take some of that wear and tear off. I do think he is literally not only the floor raiser but also the ceiling raiser for the Bucks. He's able to increase their win total from the floor perspective by simply being healthy and being on the court. But I also think he's a ceiling raiser, meaning he can be the reason that a typically probably playing team or worse, they're now a potentially semifinal or conference final like caliber team. Like I think that is a real thing. I think Giannis is frankly both of those things. I know with Sabonis he's more in that like floor raiser category where he's gonna raise the level of wins or total number of wins on your team. So let's say the Kings, since he's on the Kings, like that's probably realistically this year like a 35 to 39 win team. And if Sabonis stays healthy and he's productive and he's able to play make how he was with De'Aaron Fox, it's been a little tough for him without Swiper in the backcourt. But Sabonis could raise that team to maybe 40 plus wins, and they're potentially trying to claw their way into the play in. So that's kind of that example that I'm giving. But yeah, Giannis, I think he works in Milwaukee. Like I agree with your point. The whole team seems to like respond to him, and they all understand as well. Frankly, they're only in the position they're in because of Giannis. So like Giannis opens up everybody else's game. Like Wembanyama, it's the same thing. Opens up everybody else's game. But the difference is, for Wemby at least, a lot of those other players around him are better than most of the players on the Bucks. Like if you literally swapped the two, the results are probably the same. The Spurs would be just as good, and the Bucks would literally be in the same position there. And I do think the Bucks could probably get a few wins more because of Wembanyama's increased versatility. But those two are basically the as you said, anomalies. Those are the two anomalies in the NBA, and I don't know how many times we've ever seen in the history of the league that the two best players in the league are also the two best defensive players in the league. Like they're probably the two best in terms of consistency players in the league outside of Jokic offensively, and I guess Shea. But then defensively, those definitively I would say are the two best players in the league, and I don't think it's really close at all.
Yeah, there's really not much of an argument there. I mean, I would honestly be interested to see if Wemby and Giannis on the same team, like how willing teams would be willing want to drive in on them. I know I mentioned that a few minutes ago, but like, would it even be possible to be completely honest? Like, I mean, like, is it even worth it? Like, honestly, you'd have to go five out pretty much every time down. I don't even think it would be worth it to try and go in and get a two. I mean, I guess you could maybe try and draw a foul, but like, I mean, there's a better chance you're getting blocked than you're drawing a foul.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I want to see one of these teams just say like, "Screw it, we're gonna go all in," kind of like how the Clippers did with George and Kawhi, and just go get Giannis. Whatever
Hmm.
happens, like is whatever. Because the Thunder aren't using 27 draft picks in the next 10 years. They're not. They're not
No.
draft that many players.
Well, with the
Obviously,
second apron, you might have to now. I mean, you
potentially,
might have
like
to now.
you might have to pivot off maybe one or two of Williams and Holmgren and Shea, but the Thunder have basically 15 players already that they can play. AJ Mitchell is averaging 18 points off the bench. They don't even have
Hmm.
Jalen. They've continued to look pretty dominant. They don't even have Topic. They don't even he's out right now. They don't have Jalen Williams right now. He's hurt. Aaron Wiggins is an underrated role player. They have Caruso. They have Isaiah Joe. Like they have so many guys that are just slept on that make the Thunder as good as they are. And
Hmm.
just using the draft picks, frankly, would increase that. I don't think it would like take away from it. It also gives them flexibility in the future to remain underneath like that second apron. They're not right now because of their three contract extensions, or they won't be. But eventually, one of those players will leave or get traded, and they'll reset the process, like when the Wolves did, trading Cat for Randall to save a little bit of money, stay under the tax, and then allow themselves to maintain guys like Jaden McDaniels and Mike Conley and others like that as well. And they have Terrence Shannon. They've got Rob Dillingham. Like they've got some players in the future they'll have to take care of. So I just want to see a team do it because like the Thunder could literally take 7 first-round picks of any kind and just trade and get the number one pick. Like they could have just said, "Screw it, we'll trade literally everything for Cooper Flag. We'll trade literally everything for AJ DeBonster or Cam Boozer or whoever it is at the number one pick this year." So I just the teams have worked so hard to build that capital up, but now the question is, what are you doing with that capital? The Thunder have a ton. The Spurs have a ton of capital. The like Kings a little bit after the Fox trade, but not a lot. Teams like that, I think, should capitalize and literally have the opportunity to form one of the greatest dynasties in league history. Like I literally cannot envision Giannis and Wemby losing. I couldn't envision the Thunder ever losing if they had Giannis either. Like it's the same thing. You would trade Chet, you would get Giannis. It's basically the same player on drugs, as I kind of said with the Wemby and Giannis point. But like Giannis does everything Chet does except shoot the ball. So I don't know why you wouldn't want to upgrade. Like if the Bucks call them and say, "We'll give you Giannis and we want Chet and half your picks and we want I don't know Topic and Aaron Wiggins," like are the Thunder actually going to say no? Because they can just replenish those guys in the following drafts. Like I don't know. It's a hypothetical that fascinates me.
Well, yeah, and with the Thunder's ability to draft and develop guys, as you've seen, all those guys that you mentioned, I mean, with the exception of Caruso, they've pretty much developed on their own. So I mean, they've proven to be able to do that. I mean, now I know you can't just draft anybody you want in the NBA draft and instantly develop them. I mean, you got to be able to find your guys and do that on your own. But I mean, they've clearly proven that they can, and I think honestly, I think part of it, I think a lot of teams are going to kind of adopt a Pacers style of roster construction, where you have your superstars, but then you have a deep 10-man rotation to go along with that, and all guys that can come off the bench, play with energy, they can run the floor, they can shoot, they can do a little bit of everything. Because you think, I mean, that's why the Pacers were so good last year. Even the same with the Thunder. I mean, they may not have been playing a full 10 guys in the playoffs, but they were playing 8 or 9 guys that all came in and contributed, and it didn't look like a bench unit or a second unit. I mean, they were guys that came in and they played hard. Simple as that. They shot, they played defense, they shot well. Everybody touched the ball, everybody passed. So honestly, I think that is kind of the way that teams are going. I think that's kind of how the Cavs are trying to be this year once they get fully healthy, because I think that's the best way to play. That's how you keep wear and tear off of your stars. Just being able to play that many guys and have that kind of option. You always have fresh legs in the playoffs.
Yes. So basically, the opposite of Tom Thibodeau and his philosophy within
Yeah,
the
literally.
trying to improve that. They added Yabu Saley, they added Jordan Clarkson, Landry Shamit's helpful for them as well. If they could get Mitchell Robinson healthy, it would really unlock their team defense. But um, I agree, like the game's definitely trending that way. I just am curious if we'll see a team say, "Screw it, we're going to build like a dynamic 2-man action," or maybe a as we say, big three, like put one of those together and see what happens. Like the Thunder kind of naturally have one. Those are all guys that they either drafted or traded for when they were still developing, and they now have kind of a big three. The Celtics didn't have a big three. I'd argue they had like a big five without Horford as a +6 because White and Drew Holiday are they're not stars, but they're better than most players in the league. Porzingis,
Hmm.
Brown, though, is filthy, and then you have Horford in there. So like there are ways to go about it. But those are NBA super teams or not that we want to see or don't want to see happen. The Dodgers are known as a super team, but they're struggling in this World Series. Like I said, they would against these Toronto Blue Jays who have such an electric offense. They're pretty much the Dodgers on a little bit lesser of a tier in terms of like pitching. You match up their 5-man rotations. It's not necessarily even, but it's really not that advantageous for the Dodgers. And the same thing for the lineups, frankly. I know Teoscar Hernandez is batting sixth for the Dodgers, which, like, if I'm pitching and Teoscar Hernandez is sixth, like, holy, like, that is frightening. And he's a former Blue Jay who they moved off of. So, man, this has been a crazy World Series. I didn't get to watch most of the 18 inning game. I just heard like I was in a group chat and a couple of my friends were like, "This game is insane." I'm like, "Oh, is the game like still going on?" And I checked. was the 14th inning. I went, holy mother of. I then turned it on and fell asleep in my bed for like after an inning. So I didn't even see anything after the 15th inning. But they played two baseball games in one. So I want to get your thoughts on the series because it has lived up to expectation and exceeded it for me as well. And this deciding game later today, or I guess tomorrow, it depends on when we post this, but they this could be the deciding game of the series. The series moves back to Toronto after this game, and this is a very, very important one for the Dodgers to get with someone they consider their ace to be Blake Snell on the mound versus the young rookie Trey Savage.
Yeah, I honestly, I know the Dodgers were pretty heavily favored to win the series going into last night. I haven't checked the odds today. I don't know what they are to win the series now, but we talked about how good Otani has been, and oh man, he's such a good hitter. Why would you pitch to him? It's the same thing with Vlad Guerrero. I mean, he's hitting well over 400 in the postseason. I think he has 7 home runs. He's had multiple hits in now 3 out of the 4 games in this series. He's been a game wrecker. I simply he went yard off Otani last night to I believe to give them the lead. He's been just as good of a hitter as Otani, and I think this is honestly, from a fan's perspective, with neither of our teams in it, I think this has been great to see. I think this is great for baseball. No matter who wins, to see a series like this kind of go deep, and it's been a battle of good offenses, and both teams have good pitching. I thought the Blue Jays were cooked, to be completely honest. With Otani on the mound yesterday, Bieber has been a little bit shaky in the playoffs, but he pitched really well last night. I thought that the Blue Jays had used up so much of their bullpen. That's a tough game to bounce back from. I mean, you play 18 innings and you lose by one. That's just feels like such a heartbreaker. But great resilience by this team to bounce back and get a win in LA. But now I think this series favors the Blue Jays. This now turns into a 3-game series, right? And what do we know about the 3-game series in the first round? If you win that first game, you're pretty much guaranteed to win the series. Pretty much. I think that's statistically proven from when they've moved from the 1-game wild card to the 3-game. You win game one, you're very, very likely to win the series. And 2 of these games are going to be in Toronto. If Toronto wins tonight, they've got 2 chances to close it out at home. I like Toronto to win the series, but even if the Dodgers win today, then I mean they're going to have to close out in Toronto. So I think it'd be tough. I don't know. I honestly I don't really have a rooting interest in this. I'm not one of those people that would be mad if the Dodgers won. Yeah, they won last year, so I mean it'd be nice to see the Blue Jays win. But yeah, I think this series is absolutely living up to the hype for all casual baseball fans.
I don't have rooting for like intentions, but it's hard to not root for the Blue Jays in this situation. Like you see all the memes
Hmm.
of like America Blue Jays, and then like just that little tiny dot, and it's the LA, and you're rooting for the Dodgers. But in all seriousness, um, I ask this question all the time. Like after Shohei had the 3 home run game with 10 strikeouts, like why is he even getting pitched to? Like walk him. There's literally like not a reason to pitch to that guy. I know Aaron Judge typically leads the league in intentional walks, and there's times Cal Raleigh will chip in there, Jose Ramirez will chip in there, Shohei obviously chips in there, but uh, Shohei Ohtani and Vlad Guerrero need like intentionally walked if no one is on at all times, and it's hard to do that for Shohei because of the lineup that is behind him. I think that's kind of the intention of leading him off is, oh, don't worry, you can't walk him. We have Mookie Betts right after him, and then Freddie Freeman, and like yeah, like
Hmm.
you list all the names, it's crazy. Freddie Freeman, by the way, the clutchest MLB player in this era, I would argue, just to throw that out there. But for Vlad, it's he bats fourth. You know, he's cleanup. And if people are on, you can't really walk him necessarily. I know the Tigers would say, "Screw it, put Ramirez on. We'll pitch to whoever." But like, it's hard to work around those guys in the lineup. Like Shohei went 4 for 4 in that 18 inning game, and then he got I think 4 straight intentional walks, and then he walked again. And he had 9 ABs. He got on all 9 times or all 8 times. Like it's literally like you talk about. We've never seen this before with Wemby. Like we don't see what we see from Shohei,
Hmm.
and frankly, in the playoffs from Vlad Guerrero, I've had my reservations in the past because I think he's a slow starter in the season. I think he gets off to a slow start, doesn't show like what he's truly capable of. But my God, man, he 7 home runs in the postseason. I think the only person that could rival that is probably Shohei because of the 3 home run game. But he has clearly been, in my opinion, the best player from start to finish this entire postseason. He has not slowed down. He almost every hit seems like hard barrel to bat as well. Like he's not really whiffing on anything. He's not striking out a lot. Um, I saw that pitch that he hit against Shohei in that game to put Toronto up. I went, good lord, like the crack on
Hmm.
that back, the powerful dude. Obviously, he's a little bit on the bigger side, but man, that leads to power, and he's improved his fielding year in and year out. I think that's kind of what I was suspect on him about when he first got into the majors, and he was at third. They moved him to first, and he has improved. He has been a very, very effective first baseman defensively, and for the Blue Jays, they're doing most of this without Bo Bichette as well. He's played sparingly in the series, but they haven't really had him for most of the series. So they're getting contributions from their other guys who maybe aren't household names, who also tack on what Vlad does. So I think the series does favor Toronto. I just think they have a lot of momentum after the 18 inning game, and you mentioned them using most of their arms. The Dodgers did the same thing. It got to the point where the Blue Jays just told Eric Lauer to pitch the rest of the game, and the Dodgers told Klein to pitch the rest of the game. Yamamoto, after pitching 105 times, throwing 105 pitches the game prior, was warming up in the 18th to potentially come out for the 19th or the 20th. Like, I think that's crazy that you can go to that type of weapon that late into the game. But I agree. Like, typically the pitching would heavily favor the Dodgers. I don't think it does, at least not in this series, because of how good Toronto is offensively, and for the pure fact that they've proven to hit off their starters. The Dodgers have proven to hit off of the Blue Jays starters. So, frankly, the pitching is a wash in the series. Two of the four games have gone over, but one of them hooked under, and the other one was like a few rounds under. So, in terms of the current line today, which is I think at 8.5. So these are two high-powered offenses. We said that before the series started. I made note of that, and the offenses have not disappointed. We've had pitching moments here and there, but man, this is like an amazing series, and I'll make sure to try and watch like the next hopefully 3 games to see how this plays out. I haven't got to watch much, but I just know these teams have hit a ton of home runs, and I think that is we're at that point in the season where pitchers are probably tired and they're not throwing the same gas that you typically see them throw, and also when you're tired, it's harder to locate the ball. So you're going to see hanging pitches, you're going to see pitches over the plate, you're going to see stuff in guys' hot zones. Like we'll see, but I personally am not pitching to Shohei the rest of the series, and I'm not definitely not pitching to Vlad Guerrero Jr.
Yeah, the Dodgers got Blake Snell going tonight, who's honestly been lights out this playoffs, and he's been phenomenal. But what I think is impressive is Bo Bichette wasn't on the roster until the World Series, and he comes in and he's just casually hitting slightly under 400. I mean, he's just casually getting on base just about every time he gets up. But I think the Blue Jays might have their hands full tonight. I'm looking at the batting splits right now for Blake Snell against this Blue Jays lineup, and he's got pretty good numbers. Vlad Guerrero has not gone yard off of Blake Snell. He only hits about 230 off of Blake Snell. Bo Bichette is 2 for 11 in his career versus Snell, Ernie Clement 2 for 7, Ty France 1 for 5. So I mean, there are all these guys that have come up big, don't necessarily have the best numbers versus Blake Snell. And of course, I mean, we can throw all this out the window. I mean, it's baseball. As the way this lineup is hitting right now, they can hit off anybody. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the Dodgers have to be happy with the pitching matchup tonight. I don't know who else they would want on the mound besides Blake Snell. I mean, you lost with Otani yesterday. Who's the next best pitcher they have, right? Besides Yamamoto, probably Blake Snell. So I think it'll be probably a good game tonight. I would imagine the energy would be high in really what is a pivotal game here, because I think this game could ultimately determine who wins the series.
Yeah, and it's actually ironic. The Blue Jays played Blake Snell in Game One. The Blue Jays won Game One. They got to Blake Snell, so he has been phenomenal in the postseason. I think he's 3-1 with like a 2.4 something ERA. But in I think 5 of his starts, or if he's even pitched 5 games, it's hard with the playoffs because of the way the formatting is to remember. But there's been at least 4 games where he's had 10 or more strikeouts. He had another with 9. He is one of the most slept on pitchers in the league. He just struggles with health. He struggles to pitch deep into games as well, especially earlier in his career because he was really all over the place with his location, mainly when he was with Tampa Bay. But he's a gamer, and he is very quietly building a surefire, potentially first ballot Hall of Fame resume with the postseason success consistently, the World Series appearances and rings. Like Blake Snell's probably a Hall of Famer, and I don't think people like understand how dominant. Like when he's going and he's throwing Ks and he's not walking guys, it's really hard to hit off of Blake Snell. Like honestly, and the Blue Jays are able to do that in the first game. And I had mentioned as well before Game One had started that the Blue Jays have a near all-ready lineup. Like they can go to that. We probably won't see Barger unless it's pinch hitting. We probably won't see guys like him. We could see Jimenez. We may not. He's someone that can hit, I think, better against lefty than most. Santander's a switch. Like they have lefties they can go to, but they have more righty bats, and they're gonna do what we see with the Tigers and Guards. They're gonna play the matchup. They're gonna slam Blake Snell with righties, and they're going to, at that point, try to replicate what they did in game one. And if they're able to come up with a win tonight, it's really hard for me to sit here and say the Dodgers win the series because you have 2 games in a row in Toronto. They'll have tomorrow off, but then they'll play those next 2 games back to back. So this might be, I agree with you, this might be the do or die game. And I think this is a really big one for the Dodgers. I think this is a little bit more of a must win for them, frankly, than it is for Toronto because Toronto's proven they can hit off of the Dodgers. They've proven that, look, you can have all the pitching you want, it does not matter. And I think all to try kind of encapsulate this World Series, I would say that this proves we don't need a lockout over the Dodgers and their willingness to spend. What it does prove, though, is that you can hang with the big boys and you can beat them if you're willing to pay, which the Blue Jays have increasingly decided to do in the last few seasons, in part to keep Vlad Guerrero there and paying him as well. So they've got reinforcements with their pitching. They made a few big trades with Bieber. They brought in Max Scherzer. Like they have depth at that position, in that position group as well. And the Blue Jays aren't at the top of the order or top of the line in terms of payroll, but they're in the top like 10 to 15. They pay. They're willing to, and they're going to continue to if they get results like this, which is playing in the World Series. So I think that literally that is the blueprint right there for all the other teams. Like if you're tired of the Dodgers, then you need to pay too because they have set the standard for baseball in terms of what that expectation should look like. And if you want to be a consistent contending team, pay your guys. So that's kind of a call out to all of those cheap owners or cheap organizations who don't want to pay their guys. Um, this series should prove to them and should be the reasoning for them that they should. So that's kind of my World Series recap. That was it is a series, man. We'll see what happens, but it's hard to not think the Blue Jays are going to win this thing.
Yeah, I think I definitely like their chances. Having those 2 games in Toronto, but again, I still think they've got to win tonight. Because I do think that whoever wins tonight, whoever wins tonight, I think will win the series. To be completely honest, I don't think it's necessarily a lock just because it's in Toronto that they're going to win. We've honestly seen in these MLB playoffs, home field advantage hasn't necessarily been an advantage. A lot of teams have been winning on the road, and I really noticed that in the Blue Jays Mariners series. I'm pretty sure the first 4 games, I think Seattle won 2 games in Toronto, and Toronto won 2 games in Seattle. So they're really being at home hasn't necessarily been as big of an advantage as some may think. I honestly think it's just more having that 1 game kind of buffer and having that little extra cushion. I mean, however, not that if the Dodgers win tonight and then they give one back to the Blue Jays in Game 6, not that you'd want to come back for a Game 7, but still, yeah, I think it's the key is tonight. I think tonight is really the game that's going to determine who gets it done.
100% agreement. Not going to hear me argue that, but that's all we have. We hit another. Thought this would be a shorter one. It ended up being an hour and now almost 5 minutes. Just find a way to create storytelling. So that'll conclude episode number 7 of Beyond the Box Score. I'm Trayvon Hastings. With me, as always, Joey Korzanowski. We will see you guys next week. We'll also hopefully provide locks later this week. Hopefully better for
Hopefully
me.
some winners.
Hopefully some winners. Hopefully some sharp betting. But outside of that, have a good weekend. Stay safe. Enjoy the World Series as well. I'm gonna try to watch. So watch because it's been a phenomenal series. Best time of year. We've got football. We've got basketball. We've got hockey. We've got baseball. We've got it all. We've got baseball ending, but you never know. I mean, it's that time of year. So outside of that, thank you everybody for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, share, comment, whatever it is that you do on the various platform that you're watching this from, and go from there. So that'll be it. But have a good one, everybody.